I once got one that she was like talking shit about my performance, like while my set was going on.
No way.
She was like, "This girl's okay."
Did you sing it?
Yeah, and I was like, "Oh, okay."
Did you sing "Go Fuck Yourself" at the end?
I was like, "All right, I'm sorry, you're like missing Beyonce," but she was mortified.
What's up, guys? I'm Zach, your host of the AUXORO podcast, where we bring you face-to-face with music artists, athletes, entrepreneurs, doctors, designers, and other interesting humans in a show that dives deep into the story beyond the surface. You can now support AUXORO with a donation on Patreon, PayPal, or Venmo. We're a completely independent platform with no outside sponsors or investors, and we're grateful for any amount, no matter how small, to help push the conversation forward. If you'd like to support, you can visit patreon.com/AUXORO, link in the podcast description as well. On Patreon, you get early access to episodes, discounts on merchandise, and other Patreon exclusive content. Thank you for your support. If you love keeping up with AUXORO, we have a newsletter sent out twice a month with all of our latest content, as well as other articles, podcasts, books, and advice that we find helpful. I'm constantly scrounging the internet for things to improve my life, and I would love nothing more than to be able to share the things that have helped me with you. Go to auxoro.com and join over 1,000 others by subscribing to the newsletter. The link is also in the podcast description. This episode is brought to you by The Aux. The Aux is a short-form podcast produced by AUXORO, bringing you a daily dose of uncensored wisdom to jumpstart your life. 10 minutes or less, no bullshit, no topic off limits. We explore topics like fashion, porn, relationships, meditation, and more. You can subscribe to this podcast by searching The Aux, AUX, wherever you listen to podcasts. Today, I sat down with Niia, a singer-songwriter who grew up surrounded by classically trained musicians. She just released her second album, La Bella Vita, which is available anywhere you listen to music. She has a beautiful voice and makes fucking dope music, and you would be depriving yourself of great art by not checking out La Bella Vita. In this podcast episode, Niia discusses a TED Talk she gave about stage fright, sex robots, learning under Wyclef Jean, the making of La Bella Vita, and more. Without further ado, please enjoy this wide-ranging conversation with Niia.
Shades. I don't want to hurt you, yeah. Again and again, I don't want to hurt you, yeah. Ooh, 'cause I can't anymore.
It's pretty wild.
Diving in yet?
Yeah, don't if you haven't, I think.
What is mukbang?
It's
for the people who aren't aware.
I'm not sure if this is the correct definition, but it just seems like it.
It sounds like a Pornhub category.
It definitely sounds like that. And I'm sure to some people it is. I think it originated in Korea, but it's like beautiful, small Korean people just eating immense amount of food, like as fast as they can. Right? Or China? I don't know. Somewhere in Asia.
What's their goal of the video when they're filming it? Is
I don't
it
know,
like
they
a
don't
vlogging
speak English.
thing?
It's like they just eat like giant octopuses as fast as they can, right? It's you can't stop watching it. And some do a little bit more of the ASMR, so they'll have like a mic on their neck. So you hear like you hear.
Oh, so they're doing like it's an ASMR video. They're getting the digestive sounds.
Yeah, it's amazing. Maybe watch it. I don't know.
That's usually what turns me on when I approach people in a bar. I'm just like, how is she swallowing her drink?
How does it sound?
What does her swallow sound like? When I first discovered you on YouTube after I got in contact with your manager, it wasn't a mukbang video, surprisingly. Maybe if you have like
shouldn't have started with that. That's a weird intro.
Yeah,
sorry.
If there's some like closet mukbang channel that you have, we can definitely dig that up later. But the first thing that actually came up was a TED Talk that you did. I think it was in 2013. And I was not expecting what happened at all. And I'll link the TED Talk in the show notes, but for part of it, you actually sang a stranger's text messages from the crowd.
Yeah.
And he was visibly very embarrassed by it, even though it was beautiful. Like I was listening to it, I'm like, wow, I would listen to an album of you just singing text messages from random strangers. Like if you had a YouTube series where once a week you just took a stranger's phone and were like, excuse me, can I just sing your
That's a great
latest
idea.
text?
Yeah.
Like,
I should do that.
yeah, I think
Let's do it.
I think the world needs it. But
Right?
what was kind of your thinking going into that TED Talk? Because that was really interesting. And
Thank you.
I've done the whole TED Talk deep dive, and I love that one.
Thank you. Well, it's funny because they first approached me to just be a performer. And then I kind of, all right, I'm going to sing this song. And, long story short, when I met with the people, they're like, why don't you actually do a talk? And I didn't really know what I should talk about because I always associate TED Talks with a little bit more like technology and computer stuff. And when I started to just like sit, I had like a big wash of fear because I'm not a public speaker and I have a little bit of stage fright. So I just was like, why don't I just talk about that and figure out how it connects to connecting? So, and I actually have done the phone like improv song thing in my set sometimes when I run out of material to sing.
That's what I was going to do if I run out of material for this podcast. I was just going to sing Manoa's texts. Most of them are sexts actually, but very erotic. But yeah.
And that's kind of where it first originated. And then I was like, you know what, this might be fun to kind of show and prove a point how like the lyrical content, when you take just words and then you add a melody to them, it transforms it into a much more powerful thing. So that's kind of where it originated. And then that's why I thought it'd be interesting. And it seemed like people liked it. But it was funny how when the second I asked for phones, not everyone was like super excited to give me
because you were like, does anyone who has a phone? And like, you're in a crowd with 3,000 phones and everyone's like, what's about to happen?
I've gotten some
I have some pictures on there. My girlfriend's sitting right next to me. What is she about to do?
I once got one that she was like talking shit about my performance, like while my set was going on.
No
she was like, this girl's okay.
Did you sing it?
Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay.
Did you sing Go Fuck Yourself at the end?
I was like, all right, I'm sorry you're like missing Beyonce, but she was mortified.
She was probably like, however frustrating that is for you, she was probably even more mortified in that moment. So she got her payback.
Well, also just like why pick that conversation? She could have like pulled up any other one.
So she pulled it. You didn't pick that.
I grabbed it quicker than I think she anticipated. I was like, oh, this one will do. Because I don't think she had any idea that I was going to start reading like, this girl's okay.
Yeah. So like as a podcaster, I'm interested in stage fright. I don't even know if you would call it stage fright because it's a lot of times you're just talking to anywhere between 1 and 5 people, but just that nervous energy before I start a podcast. And a lot of times I tell myself that I want it to go away, but then I realize that that energy kind of gives me like a raised awareness in some way. And I think it just puts me in a zone that I wouldn't get to if I wasn't feeling that way. If I didn't feel nervous before a podcast, when I was terrified when you guys walked in, and
no. Are you nervous right now?
A little bit, yeah,
really?
like 5%. I would say before. I would say before a podcast is probably like 20 to 30% nerves and like 70% relaxed.
Wow,
and then it's like slowly dissipates until the end where I get too comfortable and then I say something that ruins the entire conversation. So that's like the cycle that it goes through. But like the nervous energy before, I don't think, I think I would be worse if I didn't have that. Like as much as I want it to go away, I'm kind of grateful for it because I think, what do you think about that energy? Because I'm sure you feel that tenfold when you do a performance.
I mean, it's getting much better, but I think the difference is for me, it's always the control problem. I don't really love the power you have of being like amplified, elevated. I kind of talk about it in my TED Talk where I'm like looking down at people, this kind of like, I'm a powerful thing, I don't like that much attention. And ironically, I just love to sing. So it kind of, became this thing where I didn't really go into it to perform for people or do the like showmanship side of singing or being a musician. It was always kind of like a craft. And I just was at my piano and I studied jazz. So those recitals were just weird. You could do whatever you want. I would sing with my back to people. And once I had to start entertaining a crowd and keeping my eyes open. I was like, this is so frightening. I hate being this like center of attention. And so I just ignored it forever. But I would throw up before, but at least you can edit this. Like if I go out there and mess up, I can't like
throwing
go.
up before is better. Sometimes I throw up during the podcast,
Really?
which gets interesting.
Oh,
Yeah,
no.
I've actually
Really?
only thrown up once before a podcast,
Oh,
but I felt a lot better after. So
Yeah.
and it ended up being a pretty good podcast. So maybe there's something to pulling the trigger before.
it's true. I mean, in doing podcasts, I would imagine it's a little bit more vulnerable because you're just speaking, and sometimes singing is, you got to hit your notes. But there's a lot of things that sometimes people don't know. If that is the right no, like you could be a little bit more forgiving, I think. But here it's like words, you can't really change them.
Well, I think that's part of what's cool about doing a podcast is that you don't do a second take. Like if we did this conversation for 45 minutes,
Yeah,
and I was
that's
like, all
true.
right, now let's do another take of that. You'd
That's
be
a
like,
good
fuck
point.
off.
Yeah,
I'm
so I
gonna-
guess you don't really edit very much.
So
yeah.
you edit for the sound, but beyond any, if someone's like, hey, can you take this
that out, you're
awkward
like, no.
part out? I'm just like, no, I'm going to lead with that.
That's cool. So then it is exactly like getting on stage and singing a set.
Basically, yeah. But it's funny that you say that you used to sing with your back.
Oh, yeah.
Because I've ran across a few singers who have said that. Like one guy who's over in Ireland said that he used to sing for his dad. He first started singing for his dad, and he was on, I guess they have like a different welfare system in Ireland, but he was basically said he was eating cereal on the couch, like not doing anything, and then started singing. And then one day told his dad, like, hey, can you listen to this? But I'm not going to look at you. And his dad was just like, yeah, you can sing. And he started singing more after that. But maybe it's like a common thing of people starting with their backs.
Yeah,
people.
well, it's hard to face it. And I think, I have some friends that are, actors and stuff, and they'll jump over dead bodies to get on a table to perform for people just because they really love entertaining. And I just never had that gene. It's definitely something I have to keep working at a bit because especially moving to LA, it's like people will really stab you and sing in your place. So
What do you think of LA? Because I know you were out in New York, right?
yeah,
For a
I
while.
like LA now. It took me a minute to adjust just because I'm such an East Coaster. I'm from right outside of Boston originally, and then I was in New York forever. And I moved to LA. I think just because being in New York, you kind of like glamorize being this masochistic artist in a way. Like you just get hungover all the time. You just feeling like shit, smoking cigarettes.
It's like part of the culture.
Yeah, it's part of like being an artist. And then when I went to LA, everyone's so happy and healthy and beautiful. Like I didn't even know how to write music because I was like, there's a pomegranate tree outside. The sun is shining. Like, what the fuck do I have to like write a sad song about? I'm like happy.
Yeah.
So it definitely took a transition like period to figure out how to write negative or sad music in such a happy place.
Hey guys, I wanted to interrupt this episode real quick to let you guys know that you can now support AUXORO with a donation on Patreon, PayPal, or Venmo. We're a completely independent platform with no outside sponsors or investors, and we're grateful for any amount, no matter how small, to help push the conversation forward. If you'd like to support, you can visit patreon.com/AUXORO. The link is in the podcast description as well. On Patreon, you get early access to episodes, discounts on merchandise, and other Patreon exclusive content. Also, you can go check out our merch at auxoro.com/store. We have tees and hoodies for sale, so you can listen to the show in style. Now back to the episode. Do you feel like you need sadness to make good art? Because that's definitely a common thing with artists, whether it's music or acting.
Totally.
Like masochistic. They invite pain into their own lives to get material, whatever it is. Like stand-up comics. Like I listen to stand-up comedy podcasts all the time, and they're like, I thought I was only funny because I was getting fucked up and doing drugs every night, and then I got sober, and I was still funny. But there are a lot of people that don't think like that. They think like the pain makes the art.
Well, I think it's a bit of both. I think I wasn't expecting how much an environment can change and affect it, because, I'd probably cut off my own arm for material if it was like kind of the comedians who kind of build it. But the one thing I realized, which probably relates to when someone gets sober and is still funny, it's like once I realized LA, actually I can like treat my body better and like wake up and like go for a hike or not drink 3 bottles of red wine for no reason. The work that I was doing when I actually forced myself to do it was much better because I was clear-minded and kind of like, but it was still, I had to pull from internal struggles and painful things because like, unless I'm, being hurt all the time, you have to find it. You can't just like live it on the outside.
Yeah. Well, it's like the pain is magnified too because you can't drink it away. Totally. And then, I don't know. It's like you have pain and then you are kind of masking it with whatever it is, alcohol. Totally. And you go into the studio and I don't know if you ever recorded drunk. I've recorded podcasts drunk and I've recorded podcasts sober.
What's the consensus on that?
So
which ones are better?
So I think there's definitely a point of diminishing returns for the alcohol. So there's one time where a couple of DJs came over the apartment and we had an entire bottle of whatever the 750 milliliter is times 2.
Oh my God.
And we almost finished that. It wasn't full when we started, but it was like 3/4 full. And the middle of the podcast, listening back to it was great. Like we were kind of drunk and it was good. And then by the end of the podcast, one of them was kind of doing this diamond sign on the table. Like he was like standing up on the table and people seemed like they still enjoyed it. But part of me was like,
a little rogue.
Yeah, like I don't know if people liked it because they were just laughing at us because we were all fucked up or if they were actually enjoying the content.
Yeah, it's tough. There are some podcasts that I think are funny because everyone just seems, but there's no plot. Like, I don't know where they're going because they kind of just keep going.
And you think everything is great when you're drunk.
That's true. Yeah, that's
you think everything you're saying is gold. And then it's like the opposite sometimes when you're sober. You're just like, I don't know if I should say this.
Exactly.
But then you kind of get into a groove where it just kind of flows out and that nervousness goes away.
I think I know every fact when I'm drunk, which is not good because I don't know any of them. I like think just like that date and like.
Can you give us some drunk facts right now? Or do you have to actually?
I think
I
have to be
BAC?
Really drunk. Like this like continent and But yeah, no, I'm glad I'm not super drunk.
You should go on the Joe Rogan podcast because he's all about spitting off random factoids. Some of them he admits like, yeah, that wasn't true, but like I thought that was true.
It's so funny you said his name because I just started watching Fear Factor for the first time in my life and I am
really
insanely obsessed with the show. Well, I don't know how I missed it. I was probably like nerding out at jazz camps, but
where is it even streaming right now?
I don't know. I think I got it on some like one of the many streaming services. I don't even know which one, but I didn't realize they have like blind date Fear Factor and then like couples Fear Factor.
Does Joe Rogan do both of those too?
Yes. And I saw him on a podcast talking about how he was like just stoned the whole time and thought it was like the most ridiculous, dangerous thing he's ever done.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing. He's a funny guy.
He is a funny guy. Yeah. When he talks about Fear Factor, he always says that it was like a shit show.
Yeah.
Because there were people just like drink. Yeah. Like you're drinking reindeer semen. The people are like bungee jumping and like planes. On the same episode. Yeah. And it's just normal people. And he said part of the reason why he stayed with it for so long was because it was just fun to watch people like do this dumb shit for money.
I know.
Which sometimes wasn't even that much. Like I was like, $50,000 is a lot of money. Like I might drink some animal semen for $50,000. Like I'm not gonna lie. But some of the shit that they were doing, I'd be like, you have to give me some more prize money. You have to open up the checkbook.
More than just like a Tony Hawk video game, which was one of the prizes.
What was that for the bungee jump? By the way,
it was like they had to be
Here's Tony Hawk
taking little pegs out of holes and giving them to the other person while like pounds of freezing ice was dumped on them at the same time.
Mm-hmm. So when did you, speaking of animal semen and getting ice dumped on you, when did you realize that you wanted to do music full time?
I think I always was just doing music full time, but more of just like I was a nerdy musician. I wasn't thinking of it as a career or like a job at all. You know, I come from like a family of a lot of musicians and artists, but they never really did it kind of like a professional way, like a big showman. You know, they were on faculties at Berkeley. They went to Juilliard for opera, but there was never that like weird focus of like, this is going to be your career. You're going to be a star, you know? So it was just kind of this craftsmanship side. And then I think when I moved to New York and I was studying at New School, I was like a jazz vocal major, like super nerd. And I ended up moonlighting doing jingle commercials to make money on the side. So I would like go around singing about like Subway subs and laundry detergent.
Do you remember any of the jingles from Subway? Was it just
was
like
the
Eat?
$5, that $5. Yeah.
That was some of those commercials were you or all of them?
Any of the more like jazzy laundry detergent girl voice, those were mine. And there was one that came out where it was like a guy who had a sub and all these dogs started coming because they like loved the sub, and you hear the look of love start going. You know that song, The Look of Love.
Yeah.
Because they all like love the sandwich. That was mine.
No shit.
But anyway, one of those recording sessions for like some corny commercial was booked at Platinum Sound, which used to be Wyclef Jean's studio uptown.
Yeah.
And it was the first time I was in like a professional recording studio, and like all these cool looking people were walking around. And the session, the engineer blew me off and no one told me I wasn't like doing the laundry detergent thing today. And Wyclef introduced himself, and long story short, just ended up letting me come into his session. And I think at that point, you know, he was like, "What are you doing here?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm studying voice, da da da." And he asked me to sing a song for him, sang some jazz song. And, you know, that was it. I was like, what is this world? And he's like, you know, you could do this for like a career.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? So
what was your first impression of him? Because I actually met him for a podcast about a year and a half ago. He was the second one I ever did. I don't know why his manager agreed to it at all.
He's a cool guy.
But
I'm sure that was a crazy podcast.
Yeah, he gave me mac and cheese and chicken fingers. He was before a show at the Montclair Theater in New Jersey, and he was in his dressing room. Everyone was smoking a lot of weed. I was too nervous because it was my second podcast, so I didn't know like how I would react in the moment. I'm like, because sometimes I just don't say anything when I'm high, and that was my worst fear. I'm just gonna like sit there for 30 minutes while he talks me out of a panic attack.
That is so funny.
But he got food from, I guess, his favorite food joint because he has a place in New Jersey, he was saying.
Of course,
and he fed me. We probably talked for like an hour and a half after the podcast.
Oh, wow.
So 2.5 hours total. And I thought he was a super cool guy. Let us go backstage before the show, met some other artists, and then the show is unbelievable.
Yeah, he's probably one of the best performers I've ever seen. Yeah.
So you guys were traveling on tour also?
Yeah, so that moment kind of sparked a whole kind of domino effect into my brain understanding that there was a music industry and artists like make their own albums and stuff like that. And Wyclef really became my mentor. You know, I would skip classes to just hang out in one of his smaller studios and track all my music. And I think he saw something in me and knew that it kind of needed to be nurtured for a while because I was so green, you know, just studied voice and piano. So he's like, you need to develop and kind of figure out what you want to do. And he was the one, his advice was actually to get drunk and record myself just to see what my voice really sounds like. Because I was such a, you know, like a student of voice that I was always like in my head and hitting my notes perfectly. And he was like, you just got to get drunk and record yourself. And that's your voice. And like, that's what you sound like. And I did that and I was like, holy shit, this is not, like I couldn't perfect it. It was so hard to let go of that control, but he taught me everything. He really was like a huge influence of understanding how, you know, in his backstage at his shows, there's like weed, there's people dancing. It's like really crazy. And he was like, you know, you don't have to do it this way. You can have nobody backstage if you don't want. And we went all around the world and I was on that song with Lil Wayne and Akon. I just was...
Yeah, Sweetest Girl.
Yeah, I only was meant to re-sing a sample because they didn't want to pay for it. And I think they kind of...
So Wyclef is cheap? No,
I think it's probably like, it's easier. You know, I was like playing like all this weird shit that they would sample. But I don't think anyone knew that song was going to be so big. And then suddenly I was on this like world tour with them and the song was on like the top 20 and stuff like that. So... Yeah. But he's a great guy. I love him. I think he's so talented. And he would literally at shows turn around and go, watch this, and flip a crowd like within 2 minutes. And for someone who has terrible stage fright, it was like a really good challenge for me. I was I like threw up every time we would do shows because he would change the set list. He would run into the crowd and like jump off the scaffolding. We don't know where he is for a full hour.
You're just like, where is he? He's going to come down from the ceiling somewhere.
Akon shows up out of nowhere and the piano's moving away from me because he's standing on it, jumping. And like, I was too afraid to even just move my chair like towards the piano. So I was like playing. Yeah, but he was great. And I think, you know, the best advice he gave me, I remember he came in with his like Fuji plaques. And he was like, if you don't make it, it's because you don't know what you want.
Hey guys, this is a reminder that you can now follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at AUXORO. If you're on Instagram, it's at AUXORO. Twitter and Facebook is at AUXORO Mag. You can search AUXORO on all three and we will pop up. We post behind the scenes content and clips that you will not get anywhere else if you don't follow us on social media. And it also helps get the word out when you tag us, tag the episodes, and let other people know that you're listening to AUXORO. Now, back to the episode.
It's not because you're not talented enough. Like you have to figure out what you want to write about and who you are as a person before anyone tells you like who you are. And he's like, I don't even know how to like make you a star. So you have to do it yourself. Like, okay, fine. Fuck.
Yeah. It seems like he's the perfect person to learn from because he's gone through such an evolution with the Fugees and then his solo career. And I remember one of the things that I talked about with him was the fact that he was on an electronic song with Avicii, Divine Sorrow. And so like that was something that he said he never pictured himself doing, 10, 20 years ago. That wasn't even a thing, but it seems like he kind of has this grasp of just what sounds good, regardless of what genre people want to put it in.
Yeah. He's also just like himself, so even if it's like Wyclef on an Avicii song, it still sounds like Wyclef, and I think that was something I always admired. And people were always like, that's such a weird pairing. Why are you working with Wyclef? But, he comes from hip hop and soul music and jazz, from which was my origin. They kind of go hand in hand. So much hip hop samples jazz and R&B. So we kind of knew a lot of the same references. And of course, he introduced me to a bunch of other music and Lauryn Hill and stuff like that I had known. So he knew how to mentor female vocals pretty well, vocalists. So yeah, crazy time though. I have some pretty crazy stories from being like 18 on tour with rappers. My parents only knew.
Any stories that stick out in particular?
Ooh, ones that I probably shouldn't say, but like I was on tour with some of the biggest rappers in the world at that time, and it was just pretty amazing to see that kind of culture and also be like the little sis that kind of like could do whatever she wanted and got an amazing like pop star boot camp. So I'm very grateful for him and love him.
Well, one thing that I wanted to bring up was genre, which kind of alluded to before with Wyclef. But today when I'm listening to just different kinds of music, I know that just because of human nature, we always want to file things in certain categories because that's how we do it. Like, this is a car, that's a trash can. Like, this is hip hop, this is jazz, this is electronic. But there's so many different elements now that are blending together. Like Young Thug on a song with power chords. That's basically like rock and roll, except it's like Young Thug is rapping over it. So I'm like, what is even the point of saying this is hip hop anymore? I don't know. How do you think about that?
I know. All these subgenres have really taken the ball and rolled with them. I think a lot of it has to do with the hashtag that's been kind of, with SoundCloud, you can come up with all these like goth trap, jazz noir, all these kind of words that you wouldn't necessarily use to define a musical category, but it gives a little bit more creativity to them. Because sometimes I say I'm like jazz noir. It's like, what the fuck does that even mean? But, noir, you know what noir is, that genre of like film and stuff like that. And then jazz, when you put that in front of it, you're like, I kind of get what that is. So it's
not even music.
Exactly. It kind of becomes
it's
this
just like a vibe.
Yeah. So, and there's like vibe soul, there's a whole playlist called Vibe and like slow sludge and stuff like that. But I don't dislike it. I think it's kind of interesting because it's kind of funny, to be honest, as a real musician, but I think it's actually quite clever. And I do think it actually helps people understand your genre better if you aren't so black and white, like just pure rap or hip hop, because it's not really ever that.
Yeah. And I just realized I haven't really thought about music in terms of genre for a while. I know when I first started downloading music, like on LimeWire, or if my aunt gave me a iTunes gift card when I was 12 and I could afford it, I would go buy the songs. But that was when it was more prevalent, when Apple was kind of like split up into this is hip hop, like this is jazz. And now even the playlists are just like, this is chill.
Totally.
Like this is upbeat. And all I know that when I hear a song is I like this, or maybe that's not for me, but I'm never like, oh, I like this hip hop song.
Yeah, I know. It's the same with like Netflix. I remember reading like all the things that they recommended for me was like a erotic thriller with a strong female lead. I was like, yikes. Do they know me too well? Or is this like really,
I mean,
like when they start matching like the things you do?
They're basically watching everyone. I like, even literally sometimes I've heard that if you have one of those smart TVs, if you leave it on, they're just like watching. But their algorithms are so smart to the point where if you use it for 2 months, it's basically just spitting your personality back to you.
It's crazy.
In the form of shows. And same thing with Spotify.
Categories, it's too many.
I don't know if on the artist side of Spotify or Apple Music, if they give you more information about like the algorithm or like what gets picked up, what doesn't. Do you think about that at all as an artist? Like
I think a little bit. I think when you kind of want to spread your music more, you have to. If you really want to try to, strategize on how you can beat the algorithm or all these kind of things that they do. And, you try not to worry about it, but you also know there are some like positive practices is what they kind of call them, or like helpful tips, which to me are like Pandora's box. It's a lot of like, I'm not very tech savvy and I don't love to post stuff all the time, but there are definitely like little Easter eggs of things that you can do, like tagging things to help and triggering certain algorithms based on like when and who you're targeting and stuff like that, which should be like public knowledge. I think it's unfair that some artists are like working really hard and they don't get to be seen because of these algorithms sometimes.
Do you guys can you not see it on the artist side at all? Like
you have to really like do some research. And it's also super complicated. Some of the more advanced ones that actually do bring in more eyes on your stuff, but it is possible. And it is fascinating when you have people on your team that like actually are good at it and can figure it out, because you want people to see what you're doing. And if it sucks if you post stuff and no one sees it just because of like the algorithm illusion, ghost, or whatever they are. But
yeah,
I can't explain it to you. I don't know what any of it really is or what it means.
That's why we're here. I want to get the inside scoop.
I don't know.
I'm launching my anonymous artist career on the side of the podcast. My manager knows
a lot about the underbelly of that world.
Yeah, I'm sure it's extremely useful.
Yeah.
I think it also kind of goes back to the advice that you said Wyclef gave you with you have to do what you want. But then at the same time, you have to also be aware of what other people want too.
Totally.
So do you ever feel conflicted where you maybe want to go off a cliff in some direction?
Right.
And you know that it's just not going to pick up as much traction as if you stayed here. How do you kind of navigate that?
I think for me, it's always like quality over quantity for one. And I think like, I don't ever want to compromise what I'm making. I think it's more, what then can I do with it to make it like go the distance more? I'd rather hire an intern who's like a tech savant that knows how to do like Instagram ads than like change my music or something. Like, oh, well, if you made more pop music, more people would like it. I'd rather like figure out how to get it to Kylie Jenner to do her makeup to my song. So like I can keep my song that I feel like good about and genuine, but find these other kind of like marketing ways to really push it out there. And I don't feel any shame in that, because it's like, I work really hard. I love my music and I want it to stay the way that makes me feel good, and finding creative ways to have like it be found, because it's so congested. We live in such a visible age. Like there's just so much shit all the time. Like who cares? I can't be too proud to like, I'm just going to keep it on my grid and hope for the best, But that's a new feeling. At first I was like, well, hope for the best. But it's like, actually, there's like strategies and how you can get people to your page and all this stuff. So
yeah, I kind of felt a similar sentiment with podcasting. When I first started, all I wanted to do was just put the material out there. I was talking to Manoa about this and just saying, like whoever finds it, finds it.
Right.
Like I'm the artist essentially. Like,
Yeah,
don't bother me with this
for sure.
Instagram shit. Like, I don't wanna have to post about it. But then I just realized that even if I don't necessarily like it, or I just feel like I'm not good at it sometimes, like
Right.
I get jealous of other people. I'm like, you're so good at
I know.
Instagram. Like, you're so good at Twitter.
I
Like, I
know.
don't like really think that well. I guess what I'm doing just doesn't always translate in that platform.
It's also awkward to like promote yourself. It's never like the most fun thing to do, especially as an artist. Especially if we're both a bit more introverted, which it seems like you're not like going out like, hey guys, I have a podcast, check it out all the time.
Yeah. I think I can kind of get myself into a more extroverted mode.
Yeah.
And I'm not an expert on the whole introvert extrovert kind of dichotomy of the
Duality,
character, but I do know that extroverts kind of feed off of talking to people, which I definitely don't. If I like say if I go out and I'm at a bar for 3 hours and talking to people, I just need to be alone.
Yeah.
And
Will
just
you
like
bring
kind of
up your
recharge.
podcast? Like, do you naturally
No,
bring it up sometimes?
I get pissed off at my friends when they bring it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I'll if they ask me what I do, I'll say like I produce content or whatever. And then they're like, come on, like tell me you like talk to people. I'm just like, fuck you guys. But you're like, I should do that. Like I should be proud of what I do.
Yeah.
But it's like this weird complex where
I know. What is that complex? It's strange.
I don't know.
I know.
The only complex I can think of right now is Napoleon complex, but that's with height. So it has to do with I don't know. There has to be some
There's
name for
be
it.
something. One of my good girlfriends, she like told us all she was quitting her job to start her YouTube channel. We all were like, huh? But she's crushing it and could care less what we think. And she's doing really well. So it's like, I think it's like we're just in our own way sometimes because we feel like it's icky.
Well, even on camera stuff, I never had a videographer come film. Before Manoa, I think I did 50 or 60 episodes without a videographer there or anyone doing pictures because I just liked the fact that I didn't have a camera
to deal with.
Yeah. And sometimes artists would come in and just, obviously you want to know if there's going to be a camera there or not. And some people were so relieved when I said, yeah, we're not going to have a videographer here. They're like, oh, like, thank God. Like I've been on camera all week. So I understand that too, but it definitely took me a while to get used to, even like when we do some segments where I talk into the camera, it feels so weird because there's no one there that's responding to me.
I know. It's part of our jobs though now.
Well, what do you do now before self-promotion? Like say you have to go out and like a podcast is kind of different because you can talk about whatever, but say like you do a quick interview where it's like 5 minutes and all you're doing is talking about yourself. Like what do you do to get into that?
It's painful. It's so painful. Also because a lot of it's the same questions, but I think the things I hate the most are the plugs. Like, hi, I'm Niia and you're watching like doobie-doobie-doo.
When they say like you have to say this.
Yeah. Just because it feels so awkward and then my voice gets all weird and high. I just don't know how to be natural.
I take care of that myself when I do the awkward intros after the podcast.
When I leave,
Exactly.
But I don't know. I'm trying to think of it more as like a creative challenge just to see if like I can get over myself. It's like, why is this so embarrassing for me? I don't get it. Like other people come in and do it and then leave. And it's not like this, like, oh guys, I'm sorry. So.
Yeah.
Because also, like I said, there's people that would murder me and jump over my dead body to do it and will do a great job. So it's like, at some point, I feel really grateful that I have this position where I'm at. So like, why be shy? Why like, just go for it? Like, fuck it. And at least do it the way you want. I don't have to do the plug as like animated as I'm not that most up person.
The gratefulness thing reminds me of affirmations. I don't know if you do journaling at all. I was never a journaler until about a year ago. And I was always like,
that's great.
I was always like, fuck that shit.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need to write my thoughts down or whatever. I try to do it a little bit. I used to play college baseball and I tried to like write shit down and be like, I will throw 95. Like I will get drafted in this round or whatever.
Were you a pitcher?
I was a pitcher,
cool. Very
washed up now, fully washed up now.
It's a tough like that longevity is tough for an arm, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like supposedly the most awkward action in sports is throwing a baseball over the top.
Crazy painful.
It is and it's not. When you're not hurt,
Yeah.
it's fine. Like there are times where your arm just feels amazing. I'm sure like you go through similar things with your voice where you just feel like you're in a groove and you don't even have to warm up sometimes.
Yeah,
like I would go out there and be like, my arm's great. And then 2 weeks later, I'm like, I'm never throwing a baseball again. Like, fuck this.
It's crazy.
What do you do to take care of your voice to make sure that like everything's
the
all
weirdest
good?
shit. I'm like, I turn into like a bizarre witch. Like
Spells?
Yeah, definitely spells. And like this, right now I'm obsessed with this kind of like, I don't know what it's called. I'll call it a potion, but it's called slippery elm. It's actually something, when like people clear their throat all the time or they're always just like coughing, it's like that weird post-nasal drip thing. It's kind of for just normal people that have colds or sore throats all the time. And it tastes like maple syrup. It's basically like bark, but you just put a couple drops in.
I'm sold.
Yeah, it's actually really great. Because when you go to the movie theaters, I was just telling my manager this. She's like, I don't know. But when you go to the movie theater and like you hear people just like clearing their throat the whole fucking movie, they all have like larynx problems because we eat so much acidity in our food that this stuff kind of helps like coat your throat and like heal it all in like a very calm, natural way.
So you do that?
I do that every day.
Okay.
I do that every day. I definitely like will do it hardcore like before a show. Like I had one on Monday and I was like just chugging it from the bottle at that point. Because a lot of it I think is also mental. Like I'm like, I'm taking my slippery elm, so like everything must be good.
Like a placebo effect sometimes.
But cheese isn't always, I love cheese. I'm Italian, so I can't eat cheese before. Because at the end of the day, your voice is a muscle, just like your arm. And it's like every day it's going to react differently. Like you can train it, you can do that, but it's like, it's still going to have its own little like quirks for the day. And you have to just really learn how to control it. And there's going to be days when you just really can't, it's like, there's just days I'll be off and those days that I'm on.
Is there anything you can do before a show? Say it's 2 hours before a show and your voice is just completely shot. Is there like an emergency hack that you have to get your voice back?
I mean, it depends like how much you want to spend. You can like go to a vocal
You
guy.
have an unlimited budget in this hypothetical.
Well, if I could go to one of the doctors that gives you those like crazy shots, they give you like a crazy shot. I don't know actually what's in it, but I've seen like Alicia Keys post from the like vocal doctor where she gets this like awesome shot and then she can like sing.
That's great.
Yeah.
Does it go into your throat?
I think it goes into your butt. I'm sure it's some sort of like steroid situation because that's like if your voice is like your throat starts to close up. But also what you can do is you can like transpose your songs lower. That's what I sometimes do where I'm like, I'm not gonna be able to hit any of these notes tonight. So I'll tell my MD, like, put them down a couple steps.
Yeah.
I
had a few friends that did steroids injections in baseball, but it wasn't for their voice. It was for their muscles. For different reasons. Yeah. If it was for their voice, they didn't tell me they sang. So I'm kind of pissed.
I think it's something that like helps inflammation or something, right?
It's
and also
so
makes you strong.
there are two types. This is pulling on my very limited medical knowledge from when all the guys like Barry Bonds, all those dudes were coming out for the Balco scandal. They're basically this guy that wrote a book about the Balco scandal. And so there are two types of steroids. Cortical steroids, which is for inflammation, and anabolic steroids, which helps you build muscle.
That just sounds crazy.
And so all those dudes that were hitting 75 home runs a year were on the anabolic steroids, like a bunch of cocktails. I guess you could take it as a singer, but it doesn't benefit you to be like
super strong,
260 pounds on stage.
I've been getting really into cell health, like NAC versus NAD. Have you heard of any of these things?
I've heard of NAD.
See, that's the one I'm new to. I kind of am obsessed with NAD.
You should listen to the David Sinclair podcast on Joe Rogan. He's a anti-aging doctor. So he dedicated like the last 30 years. He looks like he's 30 and I think he's 52.
Because he's doing NAD.
He said halfway through the podcast, I'm 50. I'm watching on YouTube, so I saw his face. I'm like, no fucking shit. This guy's 50.
What was he doing? Was he doing the injections or like the IVs of NAD?
So he said that he does.
Everything.
I'll send you the
please.
notes. I was taking notes during this podcast. I'm like, he was taking NMN and NAD. I think is NAD like a derivative of NMN or something like that?
I mean, I wouldn't.
But it's like NAD is what breaks down in your body.
Yep.
He was taking resveratrol, which is in red wine, but taking a gram of that a day. He does intermittent fasting. Sometimes he only eats once a day. And he actually does an exercise, which is surprising. There are a lot of smart people that I hear on podcasts that either he exercises every once in a while, but like really smart people that are, and he's in anti-aging. He's like, I know it's good for me, but I think it's
God
maybe
damn
he's
it.
doing all this other shit where he's
Yeah.
like, I don't need to exercise. Like, I'm just going
Wow.
to be a chemical machine. But he
Yeah.
does a lot of other shit too.
Fuck, I have to watch that. I'm like kind of into it. That's
I've-
what LA has done to me.
I've been super into the anti-aging. My brothers, both my brothers, I have one older, one younger. They make fun of me because I bought some of the supplements.
I saw them all in your bathroom. I was like, these are good.
Yeah, some of them I have them just sitting there. I don't use. I kind of go through cycles, but
Yeah.
they were like, how funny would it be if you just die decades before both of us,
Oh,
and you're just like on, and they're like, oh, like you just like die next year as Resveratrol bottle. Like, guys, I'm gonna live to 150.
I know. I don't think you will though.
But yeah, they always make fun of me for that. I want to live until I'm around 90.
Really? Why?
Well, so here's
So
my
long.
thing. So here's my thing.
Okay.
If I stay
the
healthy,
pitch.
this is also what David Sinclair talks about in the podcast. It's about increasing your health span when you can basically act on your own. No one's helping you go to the bathroom. You can walk around, you can go hiking, like you can do all this stuff on your own. That's your health span. And then as soon as you need another actor to come into the situation and wipe your butt for you,
Yeah.
you're still in your lifespan, but you're no longer in your health span. So
Interesting.
I want my health span to be 89 years and 11 months and then just drop off a cliff and die. Like I want the end
That's
of it
your
to
exit?
be
That what you want that dramatic?
not like literal cliff, but like
Oh,
my
okay.
health.
I
mean, that would do
Maybe.
it too.
That'd
That
be
would
pretty
do it too.
epic.
I would go out like a badass.
Will
but
you do podcasts all the way up till 89?
I don't know. I mean, if
Yeah.
I can
you should.
talk,
Yeah, well, that's in the
that'll-
health thing, right?
yeah,
The health.
that'll be in the health span. It's kind of wild. Like I don't know what podcasts will even be. Like we were talking about before.
Yeah, where are they headed?
Right now, like I'm talking to a person, but in the future, will it be
Oh
just
my
two
God.
holograms talking to each other, and we're both like on our couch,
I
just
know.
chilling at home?
I mean,
and
you can talk to my doll. I have a Niia doll already, which is hilarious.
really,
Yeah, it's like a whole weird subculture Niia story I had. Did a
How-
deep dive into that.
how did the Niia doll start?
I really like musical theater. Secretly, I don't want to admit that, but I do. And I was looking up a scene from Guys and Dolls, the musical, and
Mhm.
on YouTube, and Guys and Dolls, the documentary about men and their sex dolls, came up, and I just was like, "What
Wait.
in the world is this?"
I think I saw. Do you have a secret Instagram? I was
Yeah,
going
she
through
has a
Instagram.
little one that I started, and then I stopped because my mom was
Okay.
like, "What did I do wrong?"
When I was stalking your Instagram before this interview, there was
Great.
I guess there was a post, and I clicked on it, and there you had the account that was tagged with the sex doll,
Yeah,
and
she looks
yeah,
like me. It's crazy.
She's very realistic.
Yeah. She's also like one of the older models. I got her because you just mentioned holograms. You know, it was like that year of Coachella where they made the Tupac hologram and stuff like
Mhm.
that. And I was like, you know what? I might as well just get a doll, put it on stage, light it, and sing from backstage so I don't fucking have to. And then I found the guy who started all those real dolls in like Southern California. And it's crazy because he started out of his basement and now it's like a multi-billion-dollar industry. They ship 4 dolls every day just to the United States.
How much do these dolls cost?
Thousands of dollars.
And
Thousands
so
of dollars.
when you go in to get the doll, is it like a full body scan, like to
Yes,
get it exact?
I didn't do the full body scan because like I was a bit of a wuss back then. I
Mhm.
wish I had, but we did a 3D face scan. So her face is mine. And I picked the closest body that was similar to mine, even though she's definitely a little bit more well endowed in areas. But yeah, you can do a full 3D scan. Like people do like their dead wives. They do like Star Wars characters.
No way.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
The whole sex doll subculture is new to me.
Well,
I mean, Joe
bring her
Rogan's
next
Joe
time.
Rogan's probably where everyone heard it for the first, or at least a lot of people heard it for the first time. I forget someone brought it on the podcast with them. She was like sitting there with her
oh, that's so
sex doll. It
funny.
might have been like Whitney Cummings or something, but
I can see her doing that. Yeah.
yeah, she had it made, and it was like this really realistic doll that looked like almost too real. Like, what if it gets to the point where people are just replacing that with real sex,
what I'm
which
saying.
it's probably already there
Oh,
for a lot
yeah.
of guys.
You should. The documentary is called Guys and Dolls, and it's crazy because these men like are fully attached to these dolls. they like love them more than people because they think they are people. They treat them just the same.
So even when they're not having sex with it, they'll
they
sit
they
it down at
drive
dinner
them to work with them, and like the girl just sits in the car the whole time he's at work, and then he comes in and drives them home and tells them all about their day and like changes. You also have to like clean them. You have to like wash them, like shower because they're silicone.
Yeah, I would hope.
It's a whole like, oh well, that way too. Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
the only way that matters.
yeah. Mine is still a virgin. She's still a virgin. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know why that's important. Sorry.
No, it's very, very important. You always have to assess the virginity of your sex style.
Yeah.
Part of me is like, it's weird, but I don't like saying it's weird because I don't really understand it. And I've never like talked to anyone that has a sex style. But at the same time, I've never talked to anyone who has a sex style before this. I have.
Well, I know. What's funny is the owner, and then we can stop talking about sex dolls.
Yeah.
I asked him like, so who's your average customer? Like, what's up? Like thinking like, are you in on this thing? Like, you just make these silly dolls to make money. He said like, he really believes he's helping people because the majority of their customers are male, and they're males that have been like so horribly burned by women or just like social anxiety and stuff like that, that they just are crippled and don't know even how to engage. And then it's just other people that like are just a little more introverted and strange and just want like different things.
I want to just say one last thing on the sex style and then we can move on.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, I talk about it all night, but I just feel like that's not what you should do.
Yes. So this podcast has gone on weird tangents before, so it's all good.
Soberly.
Yeah, sober sex dolls. So I was going to say, I'm glad that exists because of guys like that who have been burned or just like, for whatever reason, they are just not having sex with real people.
I know.
There's like this whole incel culture now of guys that just like say that they can't have sex with anybody, not because they have any physical problems, they just like can't do it. And like if these dolls weren't around, like what other weird shit would they be doing? So it's like, I'm glad that outlet is there, so it doesn't go to something else.
I know. It's just also weird that like the women don't speak back. It's like a little Stepford Wivesy, like not to put my feminist hat on, but it's also like you have to learn how to talk to people in ways like, and yes, there's some really awful women out there, but I don't know if it's great that like you have a girlfriend that does whatever you want her to do because you can just put her in the car, do whatever you want. She doesn't bitch at you all day.
Yeah, and then you
take
take that to real people, and you're just like,
women
well, I'm used to talking to someone that doesn't open their mouth, and then you just like take that whole energy, and it just does not work in real life.
I think in Asia they have ones that can say a few things.
That's probably the next direction.
Yeah.
They'll have like famous people record stuff.
Ooh, yeah.
And Morgan Freeman could do voiceovers for sex dolls.
That would be, you can get like, wow, like a Rihanna sex doll with a Morgan Freeman voice.
You could probably you could pay on Cameo, like some type of app where you could have a celebrity record a voice for your sex doll. I was going to say, to get us off the sex doll topic, even though I could probably go for another 2 hours.
It's fun.
I don't know if you're on Cameo, but I would definitely pay for you reading or singing my text. Like if someone, and people charge like $50, $100 for just like a 30-second clip. If you set something up like the TED Talk where you're just like, if you send me your text, I'll sing you a song back.
I should do that. And we can do it in like different styles, like a bossa nova.
Yeah.
A jazz ballad.
People could tell you like, I'm feeling this vibe, or, I want a present for my girlfriend or boyfriend or something. Or I just broke up with this bitch. Like I wrote this really
or like you said, the conversation between you and your ex, and like I just make a song and it's like a gift to you all. That could be funny.
Exactly.
I would totally do that. I should do that.
Or if you want to break up with someone in a really dramatic way, you send them the voice note instead of the text, and
that
it's like
really
bam,
funny.
and the balloons.
I should do that. That's
balloons come out on the text screen for the celebration.
Let's do that. I'm down.
So what has the process been like for you getting ready to put out this album?
It's been pretty crazy, to be honest.
La Bella Vita.
Yes. This album was what do they call that? Like a labor of love type thing, where it was very stressful to make it. It took a bunch of years just because I'm slow and went through a lot of weird shit. But I'm really excited that it's coming and I'm done with it, to be honest. But it was definitely like a lot.
When
Very
did the
personal.
process start?
It started probably, I have no sense of time anymore since moving to LA because of the sun every day.
Mhm.
But I think a few years ago, like right after my first one came out, I was very angsty and just was like, I need to make new music. Because I think what people don't realize is when your album comes out, it's been done for a while because you kind of have all this prep. So you're really not, I mean, most people are always in the studio, but I need like a break from doing things after I'm in the studio for so long. But I was like ready to write, to go back in and start making music. But I was going through like a bad relationship that I was in, and my parents were starting to talk about divorce and things. So I wasn't ready to like start writing the words. So we went to Italy to work on the music first. And then I came back and just like sat with the hard drive and didn't write anything for months. And then like more months passed. And then I just kept like putting it off and like trying and then hating everything I would write. And then I finally just like went downstairs one night, probably a little drunk, and then just like looked through my phone of like weird emo poems and like things that I had just like collected over the course of a year probably.
Yeah.
And then just started transcribing them into lyrics. So it was kind of like it was a weird way to do it this time, but it definitely felt far more personal. And I think the outcome is much stronger for better or worse, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think being in LA affected it at all, as opposed to, I don't know if you made the first one in New York.
I made it in LA, the first one, but I definitely do in a different way, because I think what happens when your like inner circle, like your relationship or your family relationships that you have are starting to not feel as strong, or you can't really confide in those people anymore, you start to look outward for help, just either like places you love to go or like walk around. And LA is definitely home, but isn't home when you don't have that support system like perfectly all lined up. And with like my own personal relationship starting to go to shit and like my family all going through something, like I didn't really have that inner network. So everything started to affect me. And I think LA, you feel like you're in this like weird vortex sometimes, like nothing's real, everything's crazy, like Hollywood.
Yeah, everyone. I've only been to LA for one weekend to visit a friend, but everyone always says that it's more fake. I wasn't there long enough to see that.
Yeah.
I just noticed that everyone drives everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
One, because my friend was making fun of me saying that we should go walk to this place that was a 12-minute walk away. I was like, easy,
Okay,
like we'll just walk there. He's like, no, we're not gonna fucking walk. Like we're not homeless. And
It's funny.
two, everyone has small dogs.
Yes.
That are like accessories almost. Like if they're wearing a gold belt buckle, their dog has like a gold chain or something like that. Yeah.
It's true. And I think that's like where if you don't have those close relationships totally like tight, everything kind of starts to fall and give this kind of like weird mirage feeling. And I think that's kind of what happened to me. How it like just affected me, LA. Like everything was weird.
Do you have a special routine that you do for an album release, or what's kind of like your aftermath to get your mind clear?
I don't know. We're doing a really cool release party. Am I allowed to talk about it? I'm cool. We're doing this like, because the album is very like Italian themed, because I really just wanted to like dig into what I know and what I love. So we're doing this kind of like mobster immersive dinner party where it's like you come into this house and it's like
everyone's armed and
well, more like a little bit more Sopranos meets like Sleep No More, where it's like you think they're my family members and all like in suits or like track suits, and you kind of don't know like what the fuck is going on.
And there's just cocaine and AK-47s all over the place.
Big ZD. We were thinking of putting a casket in one of the rooms. We'll see.
with the sex doll in the casket.
Maybe she could make an appearance. She does have a Bada Bing shirt. We could do that. That could be fun.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
I've always it's interesting what people do after a release, because like I never really think about it, because it's always just like once a week steady podcasting. Like I've never done like an EP of podcasts, which maybe people should start doing, like release like 12 podcasts at once. But
it's also like it's a collection of like who you were for this chunk of time. And then, you have to go off and perform it. And like, I'm so different from where I was back then. I was so miserable back then. And now I'm much like happier. But it's interesting to then see how people actually respond to it. And then you have to go and find a way to like get there and sing about that shit. But I usually do nothing after. I'll just like sit at home and like watch 90 Day Fiancé.
That's a good plan.
Yeah.
Is it hard to hang on to the songs that you have completed but not release them yet? Because the way that my mind operates is that once I'm done with something, I just want to release it as soon as possible. And then if I don't get it out there, then I just like get anxious. I'm just like, I want to be done with this episode.
Yeah, that definitely happens. You have this kind of like timely sense. And with music and genres, like we were talking about, things go by so fast that, you know, if you do follow trends to some degree, like time is important, you know, like if there's like a reggaeton trend happening that you see and you make a reggaeton song in a studio, you want to put that out now because that's what's kind of going on. But that's where it's like, I care about it, but I don't, because I try to just make music that's timeless. But it is weird to put out stuff that, you know, I'm like, in some of the songs, I'm like super angry with my ex, but like now I like could care less. Whatever in his life, but it's just funny to like see the difference of like when that was actually real for me and like now it's different. And I don't know if I put it out then, I would have probably like burned someone's house down. So it might have been good that there was like a bit of time to like chill.
Now your ex can find you on Cameo and he could send in some.
That would be a lot.
But yeah, I just wanted to end on, you mentioned the quality versus quantity, and following trends just made me think of how it would almost be against that. Because if you're wanting to wait on something or just make it perfect before you put it out, but then with everything, playlists are constantly coming out, like New Music Friday. There's so much pressure. Like some artists are putting out multiple albums a year, and I'm just like, how the fuck do you do that? But I guess everyone just works differently.
Totally. And there's some artists that like, I think it's pretty cool that they can release a song a week, you know, and some artists actually are like wired that way. And I think, you know, for me personally, like I'm just not that artist. I don't connect to culture as well as some other artists do, I think. I also think like the way I resonate as an artist, at least in my opinion, is like the more personal body of work. Just I've been more of like an album artist. So but it's like to each his own and whatever works. But it's also like, what will you remember about certain things? And I would rather be remembered for my own music than being part of a trend or like a thing that happened in culture, I think.
The once a week thing is interesting because I know some rappers have taken that approach when they're first starting out where they just say like, I'm going to release one song a week until I blow up, which I can see that working just because like you're building traction on track. But then it also takes away from the story, like you were saying, of an album. You lose the element of every song being tied in or connected to one in some way. So it's like now singles are almost the new albums in a lot of ways. Like people will package one or two songs together, like these mini EPs and release them like an album.
I'd also would rather you like go on some weird excursion and then come back and like that experience you had fulfill and like inspire the music. Because if you're just like doing the same thing every week and just spitting out songs, I don't know where that content and like that lyric stuff is coming from. Unless you're taking drugs and like getting all floaty and trippy, which I guess could help too on like some cool lyrics. But
I think psychedelics would definitely help. I've never done psychedelics, but it's on my list.
Interesting.
So
there's an article that just came out about psychedelics and how they're helping with like mental health.
I saw that they just reopened the Johns Hopkins Institute for, I think it's been open since the early 2000s, but when psychedelics got banned, I think it was back in the 70s, and they were really gaining traction with a lot of good research, and then everything basically got cut off. So it went underground with all these shamans, and like some were good, some were taking advantage of people when they were tripping out. So it was like not a good environment. But now Johns Hopkins is doing a lot of research with psilocybin. PTSD for a lot of veterans are having a lot of success with mushrooms and MDMA, especially. And I actually subscribe to the newsletter because they're on the cusp of doing research for the betterment of healthy individuals.
Wow.
Because I don't have PTSD. I don't have any of the medical conditions that would qualify me for signing up for it. But I feel like that would be super interesting to be a part of it.
Man, you should do a podcast on that.
I have
on the drugs.
I should do a slew of different drugs and release it as an album
You
for
should.
podcast.
That would be.
Get like 12 different drugs and be like, this one's ketamine, this one's mushrooms.
Don't do ketamine. That one's so
I've never done
sweet.
ketamine.
Yeah,
I just know K-holes. I hear people talk about that and it doesn't sound fun.
I'd listen to them all though. That would be fun.
I appreciate that. That's at least 12 streams
there
right
you
there
go.
for each drug. But then you, as the
And I would
listener, you
promote it.
have to.
I'd pick my favorite drug of your podcast. Like everyone has to pick their favorite drug.
Perfect.
Podcast.
And then
This isn't promoting good stuff. That we're drug podcast.
yeah, who cares?
Oh, yeah.
There's so many. Like there are probably podcasts specifically just for sex
that.
dolls or like there. I know there are ones of psychedelics, but I think
Interesting.
with psychedelics the stigma is changing to the point where people are saying that it has a lot of benefits. So now I think when most people think of psilocybin or mushrooms or LSD, it's more of like an exploratory vibe, not like I'm just gonna be a piece of shit and like trip out for a weekend. Like you can actually find out a lot about yourself.
Was discovered by someone who was on LSD.
Wow.
There was the Whitney Museum did a whole LSD exhibit like years ago when I was here. And I'm proud to say I went on LSD to the LSD exhibit.
That,
yeah. There you go.
I think that's a good note to end on.
Perfect.
I'll let the listeners marinate on that. But thank you so much for stopping by.
Thank you for having me.
Your manager sent me a sneak peek of the album and it sounds beautiful. So I can't wait for the release. And
thank you.
Yeah, this was a wonderful, wide-ranging conversation.
Yeah, I'm glad. Oh.
All right. Wow. Thank you for tuning into this episode of AUXORO. If you haven't already, please hit us with a 5-star rating and comment on Apple Podcasts. This helps us appear higher in searches, which means more people will find out about AUXORO. Other ways to help get the word out is telling a friend, tagging us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, writing a blog post, or supporting us with a donation on Patreon. We are a completely independent platform, and we're grateful for every listener who supports this podcast. Thanks for coming along for the ride, and I'll see you guys next time.